Okay, picture this. You're facing down a horde of goblins, your party's counting on you, and you confidently declare you're unleashing a game-changing spell, only to have that moment deflate like a punctured whoopee cushion because you forgot a tiny but crucial rule.
Yeah.
Maybe you needed a weird bit of fungus for that spell, or you tried to sling two big spells in the same breath. Sound familiar? We've all had those D&D brain farts.
Absolutely. And that's why we're plunging into the deep end today. Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to mastering the meaty bits of knowledge.
Right.
Think of this as your fast-track pass to feeling like a magical maestro at your next D&D session.
Exactly. Our quest today is to strip away the mystery surrounding D&D spellcasting. We're going straight to the core rules to dissect, what spells are, how they actually work, and all the need-to-know details for wielding arcane or divine power like a pro.
Yeah, and it's useful stuff.
Even if you've been casting spells for years, stick around.
Yeah.
There might be some sneaky rules nuances you've overlooked.
What's truly fascinating is that while every spellcasting class has its own unique magical flavor, the underlying engine, the core mechanics, remains surprisingly consistent. Grasping these fundamentals isn't just about playing better. It's about unlocking a deeper appreciation for the elegant system that makes the magic in D&D so engaging.
All right, let's get down to brass tacks.
Yeah.
What is a spell in D&D? It's not just about looking cool and saying fancy words, right?
Precisely. Or, well, not just that anyway. The rulebooks define a spell as a discrete magical effect. A single specific instance of shaping the raw magic that flows through the D&D multiverse.
Okay.
Imagine the very air around you buzzing with invisible magical energy. Casting a spell is like carefully plucking specific strands of that energy, arranging them in a particular way, setting them vibrating at a precise frequency, and then, releasing that focused energy to create a desired effect.
Plucking invisible strands of energy. I love that image. Makes it feel really tangible.
It does, doesn't it?
And spells can do practically anything, can't they? Tools, weapons, you name it.
Oh, their versatility is a hallmark. Spells can be your problem solvers, offering creative solutions to all sorts of challenges.
Right.
They can be potent weapons, dealing damage or inflicting nasty conditions on your foes. They can act as shields, protecting you from harm.
Healing, too.
They can mend wounds, reverse negative effects, even dabble in the very essence of life and death. The scope of their application is truly vast.
It really speaks to the rich history of magic in these fantasy worlds. The rules even hint that countless spells have been created over time, with many now lost and perhaps waiting to be rediscovered.
Yeah.
Imagine finding an ancient scroll with a spell no one's seen for centuries.
That sense of a deep, almost archaeological lineage of magic is a fantastic element of the game. It suggests possibilities for discovery, for powerful characters to potentially even, reinvent lost spells as their knowledge and power grow.
Now, when you eyeball a spell description, the level from 0 to 9 jumps out. What does that tell us at a glance?
So the spell level serves as a general indicator of its potency. Think of it as tiers of magical capability.
Okay, tiers.
Level 0 spells are cantrips. Reliable, less impactful spells that can be cast almost instinctively. As the level climbs, so generally does the spell's potential and impact, culminating in the truly world-altering 9th level spells like Wish.
Wow.
Key takeaway. Higher spell level means greater potential, but access is tied to character progression, not a direct power multiplier.
So a 9th level spell isn't just 9 times stronger than a 1st level spell.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
No, not a direct linear progression. It's more about the degree of magical mastery required.
Ah.
A 9th level spell represents a command of arcane or divine forces far beyond that needed for a 1st level spell. Also crucial to remember, your character level doesn't directly translate to the level of spells you can cast.
Right, that's important.
You usually need to be a 17th level character to even unlock the ability to cast 9th level spells.
Gotcha. You don't go from 0 to magical hero overnight. Now, different spellcasting classes access their magic in different ways. Some know a set list, while others prepare spells. What's the fundamental difference there?
This is a really important distinction. Classes like bards and sorcerers operate on a spells-known system.
Okay.
They have a specific and limited repertoire of spells that are always in their magical toolkit. They select these spells as they level up and can only cast the spells they know.
Right.
Many magic-using monsters also follow this spells-known model.
So it's like having a curated playlist of your favorite magical hits that you can play anytime.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. On the flip side, classes like clerics and wizards use a spell preparation system. They have access to a broader range of spells within their class list, but before they can cast them each day, they need to spend time in prayer or focused study to prepare a specific selection of those spells.
Okay.
The number of spells they can prepare is determined by their class level.
So that's more like packing your magical backpack for the adventuring day. You choose which spells you think you'll need for the challenges ahead.
That's a great analogy. And in both scenarios, whether you know spells or prepare them, the number you can have ready to cast at any given moment is limited by your character's level and class.
Okay, so we've got spells in mind, but actually casting them requires something else. Spell slots. These always felt a little abstract to me, you know.
Yeah, they can seem that way at first. Spell slots represent the finite amount of magical energy you can channel before needing to rest and replenish.
Right, the energy.
Manipulating the weaves and directing its power, even for seemingly simple spells, is mentally and sometimes physically taxing. Higher-level spells demand a greater expenditure of this energy.
Okay.
Think of spell slots as containers of different sizes. A first-level spell can fit into any container of first level or larger, but a potent ninth-level spell can only be poured into a ninth-level container.
Like grooves, maybe?
Sort of, yeah, spell slots. Your daily magical fuel, use wisely.
So when you cast a spell, you're essentially filling one of these containers with the magical energy required for that particular spell.
Precisely. Let's take our friend Umara, the third-level wizard. The rules tell us she has 4 first-level spell slots and 2 second-level slots.
Okay.
If she casts Magic Missile, a first-level spell, she has to expend one of her first-level slots, leaving her with 3.
And once those slots are empty, she's magically tapped out for the day, unless she takes a long rest.
Correct. Completing a long rest, which usually involves at least 8 hours of sleep or light activity, refills all your expended spell slots. It's the magical equivalent of a full recharge.
Are there any exceptions to this spell slot rule? It seems pretty fundamental.
There are a few specific instances where characters or creatures can produce magical effects without using spell slots.
Oh.
Some class features or monster abilities allow for this. For example, the Monk's Way of the 4 Elements, certain Warlock Eldritch invocations,
Right, warlocks.
and even powerful beings like a Pit Fiend might have ways to create magical effects without tapping into the standard spell slot system. These are usually unique abilities with their own limitations.
Okay, so spell slots are the main currency of spellcasting. Now, what happens if you cast a lower-level spell using a higher-level spell slot? Does that just waste the extra magical juice?
Not at all. This is called upcasting. When a spellcaster uses a spell slot of a higher level than the spell they are casting, the spell is considered to be cast at that higher level for that specific instance. It's as if the spell expands to utilize the greater magical capacity of the slot.
So if Umara casts Magic Missile using one of her second-level slots, it becomes a second-level Magic Missile. Does that make it more potent?
In many cases, yes. A good number of spells, like Magic Missile and Cure Wounds, have specific enhancements detailed in their descriptions when cast at a higher level.
Okay.
For Magic Missile, casting it at a higher level typically increases the number of magical darts it fires. For Cure Wounds, it usually increases the amount of healing provided.
Right.
However, not all spells have these explicit upcasting benefits. Some simply become more powerful by virtue of being a higher-level magical effect, even if their core mechanics don't change.
That's good to know. So sometimes it's strategically smart to use a higher-level slot for a lower-level spell. Now let's talk about those level 0 spells, cantrips. What makes them so special?
Cantrips are unique because they can be cast at will.
At will, okay.
They don't require you to expend spell slots, and if you're a class that normally prepares spells, you don't even need to prepare cantrips.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Through consistent practice, these simple yet effective spells become deeply ingrained in the caster's mind, allowing them to produce the magical effect repeatedly. Their spell level is always 0.
So a wizard who's completely out of spell slots could still whip out a firebolt or magically mend a broken lock with a cantrip.
Exactly. Cantrips provide reliable magical options even when your more powerful resources are depleted. They're a fundamental part of almost every spellcaster's toolkit.
Now, I've seen some spells with the tag ritual. What's the deal with those? Do you need to break out the candles and chant for ages?
Not necessarily ages, but rituals do involve a longer casting time. A spell marked as a ritual can be cast normally, using a spell slot as usual.
Okay.
However, it can also be cast as a ritual, which takes 10 minutes longer than its standard casting time.
10 minutes.
The big advantage of casting a spell as a ritual is that it doesn't cost you a spell slot.
10 minutes can be a significant chunk of adventuring time. What's the trade-off for saving that spell slot?
Well, the main trade-off is the time investment. That's huge.
Yeah.
Also, the ritual version of a spell cannot be cast at a higher level. You just cast it at its base level.
Oh, okay.
And crucially, to be able to cast a spell as a ritual, a spellcaster must have a specific class feature that grants them this ability.
Right, not everyone can do it.
Exactly. For example, clerics and druids typically gain ritual casting as part of their class features. Additionally, the caster must have the spell prepared or on their list of spells known. Although the wizard's ritual casting feature has slightly different rules, allowing them to cast any ritual spell in their spellbook, even if it's not prepared.
Interesting nuance for wizards there. Okay, that makes sense. So if you have the time and the right abilities, rituals are a fantastic way to conserve those precious spell slots for more urgent situations.
Definitely.
Now, when you look at a spell description, there's a standard block of information. Let's start by dissecting casting time.
Right. The casting time tells you how long it takes to cast the spell. Most spells require a single action, which is the standard unit of time for combat and many other activities in the game.
Your main thing on your turn.
Exactly. However, some spells have faster casting times using a bonus action.
Bonus action.
Quick spells. Spells cast with the bonus action are very quick, but there's a rule to remember. If you cast a spell with a bonus action, the only other spell you can cast on that turn must be a cantrip with a casting time of 1 action.
So no double dipping on leveled spells in a single turn, even if one's a bonus action.
Got it. What about reactions? Reactions are even faster than bonus actions. They take a mere fraction of a second and are cast in response to a specific event or trigger.
Like getting hit.
Exactly. The spell description will always clearly state what that trigger is for a reaction spell. A classic example is the shield spell, which you cast as a reaction when you are hit by an attack.
And then we have spells with much longer casting times, sometimes spanning minutes or even hours. What's involved in casting those?
When you cast a spell with a casting time longer than a single action or reaction, you typically need to spend your action each turn focusing your magical energies. This is called concentrating on casting the spell.
Okay. Action each turn.
You must maintain this concentration throughout the entire casting process. If your concentration is broken for any reason, the spell fails.
Oh, no.
And you don't expend a spell slot, which is good at least. But if you want to try casting it again, you have to start the whole process from scratch. Rituals often fall into this category. Oh, and one more crucial thing related to casting. Unless you're proficient with the armor you're wearing, you can't cast spells. Big one.
Oh, yeah, the heavy armor wizard problem. Good point. You mentioned concentration. We'll definitely circle back to that in more detail. But before we do, let's cover range. That seems pretty straightforward. How far away your target can be.
Generally, yes.
Right.
The range of a spell specifies how far from the caster the spell's effect can originate, or where the target must be located. Most spells have ranges expressed in feet.
Makes sense.
Some spells, like touch spells, require you to physically touch the target. Others with a range of self only affect you.
Right.
Although these can sometimes originate areas of effect like cones or lines that extend from you.
Okay.
It's important to note that once a spell is cast, its effects usually aren't limited by its initial range, unless the spell description specifically says so.
Okay, so a fireball erupts at a point within its range, and then the flames spread regardless of how far away I am after the initial casting.
Got it.
Next up, components. This always felt like a bit of a logistical puzzle. VSM.
Yeah, VSM. Spell components are the physical requirements you must fulfill to cast a spell. There are 3 types: verbal V, somatic S, and material M.
VSM.
If you can't provide one or more of a spell's required components, you can't cast the spell. Simple as that.
Let's break each one down. Verbal, or V, is pretty clear. You have to speak mystic words. So being silenced or gagged would stop that.
Exactly. The specific words themselves aren't inherently magical, but the precise combination of sounds, pitch, and resonance helps to shape the magical energies. It's about the performance of it.
And somatic, or S, involves gestures. So you need to have at least one free hand to perform those movements.
That's correct. These gestures can range from a simple flick of the wrist to intricate sequences of movements, all contributing to the spell's formation. Need a free hand.
Then there's material, or M. This is where it gets interesting with component pouches and focuses.
Right. For many spells with a material component, you can use either a component pouch, which contains a variety of common materials,
Like bat guano and sulfur.
classics, or a spellcasting focus, like a wand, staff, or holy symbol, in place of the specific components listed in the spell description.
Okay, so that simplifies things.
It does, but if a material component has a specific cost associated with it, indicated in parentheses in the spell description,
Ah, the expensive stuff.
you must provide that specific component. A pouch or focus won't suffice. Furthermore, if a spell states that a material component is consumed by the spell, you have to provide it for each casting. It gets used up.
Right, gotta restock.
And here's a handy tip. You'll often find that the same hand used to hold a spellcasting focus can also perform somatic gestures or access material components, streamlining the casting process.
Oh, useful.
Just need one free hand in many cases.
So if a spell needs a diamond worth 100 gold pieces, my trusty component pouch full of bat guano and dried herbs isn't going to cut it.
Precisely. That costly component represents a significant expenditure of magical energy, or maybe a key ingredient integral to the spell's effect. No shortcuts there.
All right, components covered. Now let's talk about how long these magical effects last.
Oh.
Duration.
A spell's duration specifies how long its magical effects persist. This can be expressed in rounds, minutes, hours, or even years for some really powerful magic.
Years. Wow.
Some spells last until they are dispelled by other magic or destroyed by some means, like a magical wall, perhaps.
And then there are instantaneous spells. Those always seemed a bit paradoxical. If they're instantaneous, do they have a duration at all?
Well, instantaneous means the spell's magical energy exists only for a fleeting moment, like poof.
Okay.
The effect it creates, damage, healing, a created object, is permanent unless the spell says otherwise, and critically, it cannot be dispelled because the magic itself is no longer present. It's a burst of magical energy that leaves a lasting consequence.
Okay, that clarifies that. Now back to something we touched on earlier. Concentration. This seems absolutely crucial for maintaining certain spells.
It is indeed. Some spells require you to maintain intense mental focus and control to keep their magic active. If a spell requires concentration, it will be stated in its duration entry, along with the maximum length of time you can concentrate on it.
Okay.
You can choose to end your concentration at any time, by the way, and it doesn't even cost you an action. Just let it go.
So what breaks concentration? I imagine a goblin's rusty arrow in your side would do the trick.
Oh, yeah. Several factors can break your concentration. The most common is casting another spell that also requires concentration.
Right, only one at a time.
You can only concentrate on one spell at a time. Taking damage is another major disruptor.
The arrow.
Exactly. Whenever you take damage while concentrating, you must make a Constitution saving throw to maintain your focus.
Constitution save, okay.
The difficulty class, the DC of this save, is either 10 or half the damage you take, whichever is higher.
Higher DC for bigger hits? Makes sense.
And if you take damage from multiple sources in the same turn, say 2 arrows hit you, you have to make a separate saving throw for each instance of damage.
Ouch. That could be tough.
Finally, becoming incapacitated, like being stunned or paralyzed or being killed, automatically breaks your concentration, obviously.
Are there any other sneaky things that might cause you to lose concentration, like a really loud noise?
Well, the Dungeon Master has some leeway here. They might rule that particularly jarring environmental effects, such as a massive wave crashing over your ship or being in the middle of a deafening explosion, could demand a Constitution saving throw, usually DC 10, to maintain your concentration. It really depends on whether the circumstances are significantly disruptive to your mental focus. It's a DM call, usually.
So trying to maintain a delicate concentration spell in the middle of a raging tempest is probably a recipe for magical failure.
Probably asking for trouble, yeah.
All right, we've covered how long spells last. Now, who or what do they affect? That's where targets come into play.
Right. A spell's description will specify whether it targets creatures, objects, or a point in space for an area of effect, which we'll dive into shortly.
Okay.
Typically, you choose one or more targets within the spell's range to be affected by its magic.
And does the target always know?
Not necessarily. Unless the spell has a very obvious visual or auditory effect, a creature might not even realize they were targeted by a spell.
Oh.
For example, an attempt to read someone's thoughts might go completely unnoticed unless the spell explicitly states otherwise.
So a sneaky mage could be poking around in my brain and I wouldn't even know it. That's a bit creepy.
It can be, yeah. Part of the subtlety of some magic.
What about line of sight? Do you need to be able to see your target?
The general rule is that you must have a clear path to your target.
Clear path.
This means the target can't be behind total cover, like a solid, unbroken wall. If you're casting an area of effect spell at a point you can't see, and there's an obstruction between you and that point, the point of origin for the spell's effect will appear on the near side of that obstruction.
That makes sense. Can't just magically zap someone through a brick wall. And can you target yourself with a spell?
Absolutely. If a spell targets a creature of your choice, you can choose yourself as the target, unless the spell specifically requires the target to be hostile or someone other than you.
Right.
Also, if you happen to be within the area of effect of a spell you cast, you can certainly target yourself with it. Sometimes unavoidable, even.
Now, let's get into the very fabric of magic in D&D. The rules mention something called the weave. What exactly is that? Is it like an invisible energy field that connects everything?
That's a helpful way to think about it. The weave, as it's known in the Forgotten Realms setting, is often described as a fundamental invisible energy field, a kind of conduit between the will of a spellcaster and the raw magical energy that saturates the multiverse.
Raw magic.
Imagine a raw magic as the unformed potential of creation present everywhere. Mortals, for the most part, can't directly manipulate this raw power. It's too chaotic, too dangerous.
Okay.
Instead, they interact with it through the weave. Think of the wizard as a programmer coding directly into the magical system.
Right.
While a cleric is more like an app user accessing the system through a divine interface provided by their god or faith.
So the weave acts as a kind of magical internet, a medium through which spells are cast.
Precisely. Spellcasters learn to interact with the weave, shaping its energies to create the desired magical effects. In the Forgotten Realms setting, the weave is even associated with the goddess Mystra, who is seen as its guardian and embodiment.
Interesting.
Other D&D settings might have similar concepts with different names, but the underlying principle of a magical interface remains. Without this interface, raw magic is largely inaccessible. Even the most powerful archmage would struggle to cast a simple spell in an area where the weave is damaged or disrupted.
And different types of magic interact with the weave in different ways, right? We always hear about arcane versus divine magic.
Yes, spells used by wizards, warlocks, sorcerers, bards, eldritch knights, and arcane tricksters are generally classified as arcane magic.
The studious types, mostly. Yeah. Or the born-with-it types.
Right. These traditions typically rely on an understanding, whether through rigorous study or innate talent, of the workings of the weave itself. They are directly manipulating its intricate strands. Okay. Divine magic, employed by clerics, druids, paladins, and rangers, accesses the weave more indirectly, mediated through a divine source, be it a god, the power of nature itself, or the strength of an oath.
That's a really insightful distinction. It helps explain why different classes have such different approaches to magic, their flavor.
Absolutely. And the rules even give us glimpses into how spells interact with the weave. Divination spells like Detect Magic and Identify allow you to briefly perceive the weave's subtle flows.
Like seeing the code.
Kind of. Dispel magic is often described as smoothing or unraveling the weave in a specific area, disrupting existing magical effects.
Untangling it.
Yeah. And an anti-magic field essentially rearranges the weave within its boundaries so that magical energy flows around the affected area instead of through it, temporarily suppressing most magical effects.
Wow. So it's really part of the physics.
In a way, yes. And in areas where the weave is damaged or torn, magic can become unpredictable, unreliable, or even cease to function altogether. Big plot point potential there.
That really paints a picture of magic as a tangible force within the D&D universe, not just some abstract concept. Okay, now, some spells don't just zap a single target. They blanket an area with magical energy. Let's talk about areas of effect.
Right, AoEs. Many spells can affect multiple creatures or objects simultaneously by targeting a specific area. The spell's description will clearly state the shape of this area, which typically falls into one of 5 common categories: cone, cube, cylinder, line, or sphere.
The classics.
Every area of effect originates from a point of origin, which is a specific location in space, or sometimes a creature or object from which the spell's energy emanates.
Okay, so a classic fireball is a sphere that erupts from a point you choose within range. What about something like a cone of cold?
A cone-shaped area extends in a direction you choose from its point of origin. Its width gradually increases with its distance from the origin, reaching its maximum at the spell's specified range.
Okay.
Unless the spell description says otherwise, the point of origin of a cone is not included within the area of effect. So you're usually safe if you cast it from yourself.
Good to know. And a cube-shaped area.
For a cube, you select a point of origin that lies on any one of the cube's faces. The size of the cube is given by the length of each of its sides.
Origin on a face, right?
Similar to a cone, the point of origin of a cube is usually not considered part of the area unless explicitly stated.
Cylinders and lines seem a bit more straightforward in my mind.
A cylinder's point of origin is the center of a circle with a given radius at a specific height or on the ground. The effect then extends vertically upwards and downwards from this circle to a height specified in the spell.
Up and down.
A point of origin is included within a cylinder's area typically. A line-shaped area extends in a straight path from its point of origin up to its specified length and has a defined width.
Like a lightning bolt.
Exactly. Typically, the point of origin of a line is not included in the affected area.
And with all these area of effect spells, the magical energy spreads out in straight lines from the origin. So if there's total cover, that magical effect stops there, right? Can't go around corners.
Exactly. If an unobstructed straight line cannot be drawn from the spell's point of origin to a specific location within the intended area of effect, that location is not affected by the spell. Total cover acts as a barrier, blocking these imaginary lines of magical influence.
So ducking behind a sturdy wall can definitely save you from most areas' effect spells originating on the other side. That's a crucial tactical tidbit.
Absolutely crucial. Cover is king sometimes.
Now, many spells don't just automatically work their magic. Often the target gets a chance to resist. That's where saving throws come into play.
Yep. Many spells allow a target to make a saving throw to avoid some or all of the spell's harmful effects. The spell's description will specify which of the 6 ability scores.
Strength, Dex, Con, Int, Wisdom, Charisma.
Right. The target uses for the saving throw, for example, Dexterity to try and dodge a fireball, or Wisdom to resist a mental manipulation spell.
Okay.
The description will also detail what happens on a successful save versus a failed one. Often a successful save means taking half damage or avoiding the effect entirely. Sometimes it negates it completely.
And the difficulty of that saving throw, the spell save DC or difficulty class, that's determined by the caster, right?
Yes. The DC to resist one of your spells is calculated using a simple formula. 8 plus your spellcasting ability modifier.
Which depends on your class.
Exactly. Intelligence for wizards, wisdom for clerics and druids, charisma for sorcerers, bards, warlocks, paladins, plus your proficiency bonus.
Which goes up as you level.
Plus any other special modifiers you might have from class features or magic items.
So as a spellcaster levels up and their proficiency bonus increases, and as they improve their relevant spellcasting ability score, it becomes progressively harder for enemies to resist their spells.
Exactly. Your magic gets harder to shake off.
That makes perfect sense. What about when a spell doesn't rely on the target's reaction, but instead on the caster's accuracy?
Yeah.
That's where attack rolls come in.
Right. Some spells require the caster to make a spell attack roll to determine if the spell effect hits the intended target. Think Firebolt or Guiding Bolt.
Okay.
Your attack bonus for a spell attack is calculated as your spellcasting ability modifier plus your proficiency bonus. Similar calculation, different application.
Got it.
Most spells that require attack rolls are ranged spell attacks. And here's a tactical tip to keep in mind. Remember the rule for making ranged attacks while you're within 5 feet of a hostile creature that can see you and isn't incapacitated.
Oh yeah, disadvantage.
You have disadvantage on the attack roll. Big penalty.
So even a powerful archmage risks fumbling their magical attack if they're standing toe-to-toe with a pesky goblin. It's a good incentive to maintain a safe distance when slinging spells.
Definitely. Stay back if you're throwing ranged magic. Now, let's shift gears slightly and talk about the schools of magic. There are 8 of them, right? Abjuration, conjuration, divination, and so on. What primary purpose do these schools serve in the game?
Yeah, I always see those listed. Abjuration, conjuration, divination, enchantment, evocation, illusion, necromancy, and transmutation. Academies of magic and wise spellcasters have long categorized spells into these 8 distinct schools.
For organization, mainly.
Pretty much. Scholars, particularly within arcane traditions like wizardry, believe this classification reflects the fundamental ways in which magic manifests and functions, regardless of its ultimate source.
Okay.
While these schools primarily serve to describe the general nature and typical effects of spells, they don't have a vast number of inherent rules directly tied to them.
Ah, okay. Less mechanical impact them.
Mostly. However, you will find that some specific rules, class features, or even magic items might interact with or refer to these schools of magic, like wizards specializing in a school. So it's more of a descriptive system than a rigid set of mechanical rules in most cases.
Gotcha. Can you give us a quick rundown of what each school generally focuses on, just the gist?
Sure. Abjuration spells are primarily focused on protection, magical barriers, negating harmful effects, banishing things, Dispelling magic. Think shield, mage armor, counterspell.
Defense.
Conjuration magic deals with transportation, summoning creatures or objects, creating things from nothing. Find familiar, mage hand, teleport.
Bringing stuff here or sending it away.
Divination spells reveal information, uncover secrets, glimpse the future, find things. Detect magic, clairvoyance, scrying.
Seeing the unseen.
Enchantment spells work on minds and emotions, influencing behavior, charming, controlling actions, charm person suggestion, dominate person.
Mind stuff. Got it.
Evocation spells involved direct manipulation of energy for overt effects. Blasts of fire, lightning, healing energy, magic missile, fireball, healing word, the flashy stuff. Illusion spells deceive senses and minds, creating false images, sounds, sensations, memories. Minor illusion, invisibility, phantasmal killer.
People.
Necromancy spells manipulate life and death energies, granting temporary life, draining it, animating undead, restoring life, false life, animate dead, revivify.
Life and death.
Finally, transmutation spells focus on altering physical properties of creatures, objects, or the environment. Enlarge, reduce, polymorphs, fly, changing things.
Shaping stuff. Okay, that covers them all. Necromancy always carries a certain ominous vibe, though.
Yeah, the rules even touch upon the ethical considerations of creating undead.
That's a very important point to highlight. The game rules explicitly mention that the practice of creating undead through spells like Animate Dead is generally considered an act of evil. And it's typically only evil-aligned spellcasters who frequently engage in such dark practices. This underscores the fact that magic in D&D isn't always morally neutral, and certain schools of magic can have significant ethical implications within the game world.
That's a crucial reminder that the magic we wield has consequences within the narrative. Good point. Finally, let's briefly discuss what happens when you have multiple magical effects occurring simultaneously. How do they interact? Do they stack?
Good question. The general rule is that the effects of different spells will stack or overlap if their durations coincide.
Okay, different spells stack.
However, the effects of the same spell cast multiple times do not combine. Instead, only the most potent effect from those identical castings applies while their durations overlap, or the most recent effect takes precedence if the castings are equally potent.
So if two wizards both unleash a fireball in the same area, it's not double the fiery devastation. The damage doesn't stack.
Correct. But if one casts Fireball and another casts a spell like Acid Arrow on the same target, those different effects would both be active, assuming they hit and weren't saved against, etc.
Okay.
And to give another clear example, if two clerics both cast the Bless spell on the same character, that character only gains the benefits of the Bless spell once. They don't get to roll two separate bonus dice on their attacks and saving throws.
Right. The best version applies, or the newest if they're the same. Makes sense. All right, we've covered an immense amount of magical territory today, taking a truly deep dive into the fundamental rules of spellcasting in D&D.
We certainly have. We've explored the very definition of a spell, the significance of spell levels and those all-important spell slots, the difference between the spells known and spell preparation systems.
The VSM components.
The crucial details of casting times, ranges, components, and durations, the nature and importance of the weave, how area of effect spells function, and the mechanics of saving throws and spell attack rolls, not to mention the fascinating schools of magic and how multiple magical effects interact. Phew.
So for everyone listening, the key things to remember are understanding spell slots as your daily magical fuel, always being aware of the components your spells require, especially those costly or consumed ones.
Yep.
Paying close attention to casting times and range to avoid magical mishaps, and fully grasping how concentration works to maintain those powerful ongoing spells.
Absolutely.
These are the essential building blocks for effectively and confidently wielding magic in your D&D adventures.
And remember, truly mastering these foundational rules will not only make you a more capable and strategic spellcaster, but will also give you a much richer appreciation for the intricate and often surprising system that governs all the magic within the game.
Yeah.
Don't hesitate to revisit these concepts, and always feel free to consult the core rulebooks as you continue your own magical journey. They're there for a reason.
Now for one final thought to conjure with. Considering the detailed rules surrounding spell components and the potential for various environmental factors to break a spellcaster's concentration, how might a particularly clever and resourceful player creatively exploit these rules in unexpected and advantageous ways during a D&D session?
Ooh, interesting question. using the rules against the rules, almost.
Mull that over, and you might just discover a magical strategy we haven't even touched upon today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the heart of D&D spellcasting.